Hello, Rachel.
Hi, Ryan.
No, Rachel, we gotta be like Star Trek Discovery in this particular episode and just speak in nothing but hushed tones and whispers. Hi, Rachel. How are you?
I'm okay, Ryan.
What was that?
I am okay.
What was that? Hi, Rachel. How are you? Sorry, I wanted to get goofy straight off the bat because I needed to just get that off my chest. This episode, 90% of it was hushed whispers and the other 10% was yelling.
What?
Yes. So we're here to recap and look over Star Trek Discovery again. So we're here, Rachel, doing our usual affair, rewatching Star Trek Discovery, giving it a watch over for the first ever time since it has initially aired. And we are in season 2 now, so we're past the teething problems of the first season. We're in the second season, in which the show is furthering its identity. It's still evolving. It's still ever-changing. It's still finding its footing, and it's really cementing what its identity is. The first season, a little fun experiment of what we can do. Second season, is this what the show is? Who knows? That's what we're coming back for, to see how it holds up on the rewatch. What episode are we up to?
We are up to episode 3 of season 2, which is called Point of Light. The description that IMDb offers up for this particular episode is: a surprise visitor to the USS Discovery brings shocking news about Spock and dredges up regrets for Burnham. Following the asteroid incident, Tilly struggles to keep a grip on her reality. L'Rell's authority at Kronos is threatened.
How can I help?
The Federation needs to be aware of the situation. If L'Rell falls, peace falls with her.
I'll pass it up the chain of command immediately.
Thanks.
This is one of the low-rated episodes of the show, and I can see why. So this episode, I said before we started to rewatch it today, I said I was very excited to see this episode because out of all of the Star Trek Discovery episodes of the 2 seasons, this is the one I found to be the most forgettable. It was the one that I remembered very few details of. All I really remembered was the eye-roll-inducing ending of the episode, and one or two little things here and there, but I didn't remember what actually happened. So, and I knew beforehand as well that this was one of the lowest rated episodes.
I just double-checked, and it is currently the lowest rated episode
Okay, I couldn't remember.
of all of Discovery, including the episodes of season 3 that are currently out.
So it is the lowest rated, and I was excited to see what it would be like on the rewatch, what it would bring in, and what it does it live up to that low rating? Does it have more to it than what my memories could conjure up? Was there just stuff that I had what had I forgotten?
Appreciate what it had to offer.
And having seen it, it lives up to all the bad hype that it has bestowed upon itself with its low rating and the fact that I find it so forgettable that I have 6 pages of notes because I had to furiously write down things so I could remember the details, because I do not remember the details of this episode as we're speaking right now. They're slipping away because they're so foggy to me. But when I look at my notes, I'm like, oh yeah, they brought up this thing in the episode briefly.
Yeah, they rely on this.
Pike was in this episode. Do you remember that Pike was in this episode? I've already forgot. Until I just
and he was
looked at my
fun.
notes, I saw Pike written down. I was like, oh yeah, Pike was involved in the story at one point.
He was
I completely
fun.
forgot.
He was involved with Burnham's storyline and Tilly, and he was great in both of them.
How did you feel about this episode when you initially saw it, and how does it stack up for you on this rewatch? Because I had forgotten about it, but whenever we talk about Star Trek Discovery off the pod, you kind of bring this episode up a lot.
I do.
So evidently it stuck with you more, but what was
Yeah.
your feeling on the initial watch, and how does it feel now?
So I was very frustrated with this episode when we first watched it because there are lots of different things that they could do and they don't do any of them. They just hit that fast forward button and do the easy thing regardless of whether it makes sense or not. And they use all of these visuals to try and distract you. And it's just like, this is here because it looks cool. It doesn't need to make sense. It adds visual interest. And we're starting the scene like this because it looks cool. And we're ending the scene here because he said a cool line.
And this is what you remembered from it, or is this stuff that's kind of drudged up as we've rewatched it?
That's what I remember thinking when we watched it, because it was an episode where on this watch and the first one, I did this as well, where I would look away because the visuals would be like hurting my eyes.
Very abrasive, to say the least.
They have a lot of strobing light effects.
Lots of jarring cuts and camera moves.
Yep, and lots of flipping camera moves. And I was just like, nah, I'm not up for this. This isn't servicing anything. It is just here because they think that it looks cool. I'm not missing anything by not looking at them doing this. And it is making me uncomfortable watching it. I was particularly frustrated on this rewatch with how all of the characters are written.
Oh, you think?
Yeah, but like everybody just says what is most convenient to get from A to B.
Well, not only that, this episode is filled with, and this season in particular, this was a symptom of last season definitely as well, but this season and particularly this episode is filled with those lines of dialogues that is just telling you the state of affair and or recapping whole things. Amanda, all she serves in this episode is to just go, this is Spock's entire backstory. Are you aware of this, Michael? Michael knows. She was there, but that's for the audience, you see. And a lot of the dialogue in this, every single story had dialogue like that, even down to little things like, I like the beard. I hear Klingons are growing their hair again because we heard that the fans didn't like the bold Klingons.
Yeah.
So we're addressing it with this very clunky line of dialogue that lets the audience know that we know that you didn't like it, we fixed the problem, and here's the in-universe explanation for why we fixed the problem and why the problem existed in the first place.
Yeah.
And lots of weird lines like that was spread throughout the episode, and it just looked you could see that it was like what I said about the first episode, where it's like, you got this nice map here, and you've just tacked on these extra things that it just feels tacked on, and it feels like they're aware of the criticisms sometimes, and that was an example of, we're aware and we're saying it out loud, so that means it's okay now. But it does feel clunky script-wise, and when you're watching it feels clunky.
It's frustrating because you can tell that they're trying to add detail and expression, but the way that they do it, it makes it feel more lifeless.
Oh, it makes it feel manufactured.
Yes.
It doesn't feel like it's from the universe of the show addressing it. It feels like the writers are looking you dead in the eyes and saying, we are addressing this. You should now let it go.
Nothing about this episode felt organic or truthful to me. Absolutely nothing. And even moments where I was just like, oh, maybe. Then the rest of the scene happened and it was just taken away. Like, I was quite enjoying the scene with Amanda and Burnham where they were talking over the past, and Amanda was explaining her regrets for not being a human enough mother for Spock. And those regrets, I liked that idea in the way that she was performing it in that way where there was deep regret, but also the Vulcan training, and because she's been living in that society impacted the way that she expressed that regret.
I agree.
And then the end of the scene happened.
Well,
And then I was like, well, I guess it doesn't matter now.
in defense of the scene, though, with that ending, it makes sense with the rest of the scene. But even with what you were saying there about you like this stuff, I didn't. I personally found that to be the weakest element of this episode, but we'll talk about it. But what ruined that scene for me, outside of further elements I'll talk about, is it was said in hushed whispers and tone in which you, the audience, know this is serious because I'm talking like this. So
and
you
they're
know
both
it's
fighting back
serious.
tears the whole time. Yeah, that lessened it, but I just liked kind of that mini monologue that she had in the middle where she was dealing with her feelings about being a parent and the decisions that she's made, but then it didn't feel like that lined up with the way that she treated Burnham at the end of the scene. Because if she's explaining that that's the lesson that she learned from raising Spock and those are the regrets that she has, why is she then, after realizing that and dealing with that and speaking about that with her daughter, does she then go on and essentially do the exact same thing of saying, no, I am going to emotionally cut myself off from you. I am not forgiving you. Spock didn't, so I'm not. We're done here.
Well, she is disappointed because Michael didn't tell her what she did. And in this whole scene, Amanda's being very vulnerable and opening herself up to Michael and expressing her guilt and her trauma and her regret about Spock, and Michael doesn't reciprocate that. So Amanda, being the parent there, feels betrayed by her own child there, because it's very hard for a parent to open up to a child, and then the child does not reciprocate that, so it feels like a betrayal. But
Michael does open up.
But she doesn't tell her what happened. She just tells her, "Oh, it's my fault that Spock's a fuck up."
It's my fault. I said something.
Not Sarek's at all, by the way. Sarek apparently is the greatest guy, and Michael's the reason why the four of them never get together. Not the fact that Spock and Sarek have had a falling out because of Spock's life choices, and that has already been explained in season 1 of Discovery. It's because of Michael.
Michael's the most important person.
They have lines saying that in this episode. Like, Amanda has a line that is basically like, "But Michael, you were different. I treated you differently because you're my daughter." And it
was different. It was different with you. I gave you everything. I didn't give Spock
because you're different.
Any of that.
It was different with you, Michael. I gave you all my joy and my affection that I was not permitted to give to him. But Spock is half human. If he had been permitted to embrace the feelings that I know he has inside of him, it would have saved him from all the trouble that he's in now.
See, you and I are very, very different when it comes to this stuff. I'm far more nihilistic when it comes to this, because you just said, like, "Oh, it's interesting. I was interested about this parental thing." And all I'm thinking is, I did not give a single shred of my attention or care about their relationship. When it comes to Michael Burnham's storylines, and when it comes to her relationships, whether they be romantic with someone like Ash Tyler, or whether they be with family members like Sarek, Amanda, or Spock, my brain shuts down, because those stories don't connect to me whatsoever. So when the show is trying to flesh them out, I look at them with apathy because I have no investment in them. So when this storyline played out in this episode, I did not care. But since I'm thinking about it analytically, I had to try and stop myself from that mentality and actually think about it from how people that enjoy this and enjoy that particular element see this. And I still struggled because there is no story with Amanda and Michael in this episode. It is
No.
just exposition dump, and then Amanda leaves. There's no drama. There's no beginning, middle, and end. There's no
There doesn't
inciting
need to
incident.
be.
There's no anything.
don't care.
All it is you get two important pieces of information. Really, just two major important pieces of information. Spock knew about the Red Angel since he was a kid.
Which
and that
we
brings
already
stuff.
knew.
Well, we didn't know he knew about the Red Angel. We knew about the Red Signals. But
No,
that brings
no. His notes also mentioned the Red Angel. I swear.
I don't know.
I swear they've also brought it up.
This is what this
because
scene is bringing. It is he
they're
knew about the Red
confirming
Angel.
that and linking it to the night where Burnham went off, but we don't know that.
But the
yet.
Red Angel, okay. That and the second thing, which we already knew, but it's just reaffirming it, which is Michael is the reason for why Spock is Spock, because she damaged him so badly. But we don't know how, but we will find out. And that's all their story was. There was no story there. It was just information. No story. So
we are told. That is it. We are told, and then it ends, and we move on to the next thing.
And when we have in other Star Trek or even other television shows, just to expand out, when you have a story in which it's a main character and then a parental unit comes onto the show, whether it be a biological one, or it's an uncle, or it's an auntie, or it is their mother, or whatever, they usually have a plot line that happens in the story, as well as furthering the understanding of a main character via their parental figure.
the main episode that I think of that is, I think,
With Deanna Troy's mum.
No, I'm thinking of I think it's Family from TNG, where like Picard's going back to
his brother.
His brother and Worf's parents are on the Enterprise. Like, that's the episode that I think of when I think of like
And that
them
one
dealing with family issues and stuff. But
and that one doesn't have a plot necessarily in the way of like a heavy narrative, but there is a plot with both of those characters and their relationship with their family and the tension between them and how it has to break. This isn't going for that, of course. This is going for something else. But my point is, there was no beginning, middle, and end to this. It was Amanda comes on the ship, tells Michael information, Michael tells her information, Amanda leaves the ship.
Yeah.
There's no story here. So
No,
I
it's
could
just
not
an
give a
exchange of
single
information.
fuck about Amanda's newfound dynamic with Michael or our better understanding of what Amanda was like as a parent for Michael, because it wasn't communicated through an interesting story or beats of a journey being had. It was just them in one room looking at a bunch of holograms on the screen and noting down, oh, I know that. Did you know that I know this? No, I did not know that you knew this, but I knew this. Did you know that I knew this? No, I did not know that you knew this. Spock knew this, and you knew this, and I know this, so it must mean it's real. Mystery box.
Mystery box.
One of the things I remember very vividly that you did not like about this episode on our watching of it, and you've brought it up time and time again.
Which thing?
And it's something that gives you a big pet peeve, is, and we haven't talked about it that strongly on Star Trek Discovery because it seems more prevalent in this season than the first, but it's still there, is how it handles female characters and what they think feminist empowering moments are. And you always bring this up as an example of how pandering it can be with the end of the episode. But I don't want to talk about necessarily that, but I want to touch on like why what about these attempts at female empowerment don't work for you? Because as another example, when we saw Avengers Endgame, there was a moment in which all the women teamed up together and you were the only person in a packed theater that out loud exclaimed annoyance at that. So there's a certain brand of female empowerment in media that really rubs you up the wrong way.
Yeah.
That, I didn't even, like, when I saw that, I didn't even care about that. This one, I did when we watched it, but it seems like it really aggravates you that there's a certain type of it, and this falls into that Venn diagram of whatever that is. So what is it?
I don't quite know how to explain it, because it's not like an exact thing. It is more just about the way that I react to the expressions of feminism in certain things. Because obviously, feminism is the idea that, like, particularly women, but with third wave feminism, that all genders should be equal and treated as such. And I don't like when people try to draw and manipulate on those ideals to just be attention grabbing and vacuous, because all media has an opportunity to actually express those ideals and deal with issues and to show the complexities of characters, and particularly of women, in a way that hasn't been dealt with before. So when we get feminism that I react to, where it feels vacuous and it just feels attention grabbing without having actually grappled with anything, when it feels just like, hey, give us points because we're being feminist.
Yes.
We've got strong female characters. That means that we're supportive of social justice and we're doing great work. And I'm just like, no, you're not.
Well,
that makes me more annoyed a lot of the time than when it is just ignored.
Yeah.
Because if you're not actually doing the work, don't take the credit for it.
Well, when you say, well, we've got strong female characters, I know what you're talking about, but to clarify further, what does that mean? Because there's plenty of strong female characters that we enjoy that do fall under a good example of incorporating feminism or female positivity in your show, but you're saying it in a certain manner which implicates something else. What is it that you're talking about? Because, for instance, you like the TV show Buffy.
Yeah.
But Buffy is a strong female character written by a bearded man. And so do you have the similar feelings towards Buffy like you do with this? Like, so what is...
Yeah, somewhat.
Somewhat, yeah.
Like, especially as we get further away from when Buffy was on the air.
True. But what is this strong female character type that gets your gears enraged, like it rubs you up the wrong way?
I think of us being told, not shown, as one thing, and the difference between being strong and a person with nuance and a character that has flaws and challenges and overcomes them, as opposed to a character that is infallible and strong without weakness and never really challenged, never really changed.
And how does that come into Star Trek Discovery? Because we're specifically talking about L'Rell, and the things that you just mentioned. L'Rell, we can say with what we've seen in season 1, and even in this episode, doesn't necessarily fall into that. But when we get to that last moment in the episode, you can't help but roll your eyes and then fall into what you were stating. But for the rest of the episode, she does have problems. She isn't infallible. She's got weaknesses, and she's trying to overcome them in different manners, and many different things are going on. But then at the end of the episode, they do the "you call me mother," and you can't help but think about what you're just stating. But why does that? Why is that? Is the thing that I'm curious about.
Yeah. So I have an issue with media that chooses to make women strong by reflecting an awful older stereotype of what men should be. Because
which is being a badass.
For me, part of feminism is recognizing the strength that that difference can bring, and that weakness isn't a disappointment. It is part of being human and part of being fallible, and that develops connection, and resilience is an amazing thing to see in characters and to experience. But Laurel's strength is shown to be her denying her emotional connections, protecting her family by distancing herself from them. And obviously you can wave some of that off as being, well, Klingon traditions. And it's just like...
and she has to maintain...
entirely.
And she has to maintain power, Rachel, because if she falls, then we're back into war again.
We're back,
and that's
we're
not
back
good for
into
anyone.
war, and Section 31 will be unhappy with that. But it doesn't matter that Laurel is who she is. It matters that she twists and contorts herself and her situation to being the stereotype of like a male, traditionally a male, protecting his family and doing what's right and becoming a strong leader. But they are like, well, no, like if we were doing this with a man, it would be bad. But because we're doing it with a woman, it's progressive. And I'm just like, no, that's not right, because that's not just because it's a woman doesn't make it feminist. If you are still perpetuating those values and ideas that create a leveling effect of, well, one gender does this and one gender does it this way, and this is what strength is, and this is strong because it's what a male would do. That's the implicit messaging behind that.
And this is...
Am I making any sense?
You're making sense to me, but that's the thing. This is a very complex issue that is often debated and talked about, obviously, especially in storytelling, of what works, what doesn't work. Is this pandering? Is this supportive? Is this toxic? Is this helping? It's a very tough thing to narrow down. Many people have their different opinions and camps, and we're just expressing in our ways what about this doesn't work and what about this gets...
And that is just my opinion and my experience and my approach to the way that I would prefer to see feminist ideals reflected in the media that I consume. But everybody else is on a different journey in a different place and has their different values, and that's fine.
Every minute you remain here, your counselors must reorganize their tiny male brains to rationalize why it isn't them standing on the dais.
It reminds me of River Song in Doctor Who, which is... they think female empowerment is they do a badass thing, like a kid's version of what a badass thing is. Like they wear a cowboy hat and they're the best shooter in the West, and they wear high-rise jeans and they're a woman. That's female empowerment. And
yeah,
that's
female empowerment is not just acting like a man.
not just acting like a man, but also just it's this level of awesome thing plus awesome thing plus awesome thing equals awesome. And sometimes
Yeah.
that in itself I reject. And it's not just with female empowerment. There's many types of things within Star Trek
Oh,
Discovery
yeah.
we've talked about where they're like, this awesome thing plus this awesome. I was related to Doctor Who, Stephen Moffat era in particular. I always go, there's an episode called Dinosaurs on a Spaceship where that episode's title just tells you what they think is awesome. Oh, dinosaurs on a spaceship. It writes itself. And this
What
is...
a cool idea.
And-
Don't you want to see that?
And there's a level of that in modern media with empowerment of characters, and not just female ones, male ones as well, where it's just awesome thing plus awesome things equals awesome. And this one,
If a character does a cool thing, it makes them a cool character.
And this one is, it's hard to narrow down in a way because I don't know. There's many factors, but this is the one where just she grabs severed head of a baby and her lover, throws them, and then just
Well,
declares
she
to a room.
throws
I know
his
she keeps the
head.
baby, but I'm just
She just
glossing through.
puts it back.
Then she says to a room full of men what happened, and then she says, "Well, that's over. Don't call me Chancellor anymore. Call me Mother." And the logistics, the rationality that I think of, it doesn't line up. But when you think of it as awesome thing plus awesome thing plus awesome thing equals awesome, then it lines up. It lines up in
Yeah.
that way where it's like, it's pretty awesome that L'Rell's the first female chancellor. It's pretty awesome that a woman is holding such high power in a society of men. It's pretty awesome that she could outsmart her opposition with the help of another awesome woman, you see, who came in at the last moment and did some awesome stuff. But my rational brain goes, oh, okay, what doesn't work is she admits to the whole Klingon council that she was weak and someone close to her found her weakness and exploited it, and she got saved by a guy who just happened to be there. And now you should respect my power because of that guy's sacrifice. And my brain goes, you're just stating that you are weak and you had to rely on someone who opposed you to save you at the last minute,
Yeah.
and that you didn't actually save yourself. But now you're saying that everyone should fear you and respect you because you... That's what I think of is, in
Yeah.
that scene, all she did to me was stand in the room of all of her opposition and say, I was weak and I almost got killed for it. Respect me because I didn't. Not because I saved myself by showing myself to be honorable, but because another person managed to save me. We know that's not what happened. I mean,
Yeah.
but they don't. So, and then when she says,
But that is
call
the
me...
story that she is telling them.
And then...
That is the ideals, and that's the message that she's communicating when you actually think about it.
But when you think about it in the way that the show wants you to, which is, how awesome is it? They call her mum. That is so feminist empowering.
But she says, call me mother because I deserve a fiercer title than
Then-
Chancellor. And, like, so, like, that's the messaging that it wants to take away, is it wants you to think, well, they're saying that being a mother is fiercer and more badass than being a chancellor, and just because she's in power doesn't make her fierce, but now she's owning that she's a mother to her people, so fuck yeah.
She defeated
She's
the patriarchy.
a woman in power, yeah.
And she's removed a patriarchy because that's what the Klingons had before, even though not real. I mean, yes, they did. It was definitely a male-dominated society, but she's like the first chancellor that they've had in who knows how long, if ever. I don't remember how season 1 set this up. That's how great it is.
I doubt they do
But-
either, so
But,
it's fine.
you know, she's removed this, and instead now she's installed a matriarchy system, and that's supposed to be awesome. And that was one of the other things I found a little frustrating in her storyline was, as we've said, we don't know how to feel about L'Rell. It's kind of weird. The show framed L'Rell in so many different ways throughout the season 1 that it's hard to really pinpoint down. Am I supposed to be happy that she's in charge? Fine. Okay, she's in charge. And how do they start off this episode? They start off this episode by her declaring, because she's now Chancellor, every single person in the Klingon Empire has to be one. And to be one, you must strip away your individual culture to match what she wants. That's what was being stated at the start of the episode. Get rid of that face paint, because now you are part of the Empire. And that means you have to remove that culture that you had before, because that's the old ways. And now you have to be my way. And take it off. And then she sends her brute, Ash Tyler, to wipe his face paint off. And again, the guy somehow knew, the face paint guy, somehow knew that was going to happen. So he put special face paint. These are things you have to don't think about. But so I'm supposed to feel good that this character's in charge. And then at the end, I'm supposed to feel empowered that now she's removed the patriarchy system, put a matriarchy system in, which is supposed to be feminist, by the way. And now she is going to rule free-handedly by removing the individuality, because that's what they set up at the beginning of the episode. That's what she's doing. She's like, you have to remain Klingon, get rid of all your culture, and be one.
Yeah, but then she says, like not long after that scene where she's like demanding that he takes off the face paint, is being like, well, my uncle's on our side. Don't imagine more enemies. We have enough. He's spreading the truth that we aren't saying that we are getting rid of the 24 houses and that we all have to be like one group. But that is what she was doing in that first scene. Like, it would have been different if they'd actually like pointed out that, you know, like that was a specific sign of support for Cole. But it's Cole's father that has the face paint, right?
Yeah.
Which makes it seem more like it's a house tradition. So asking him to remove it,
well, it's because that's the old
part
ways.
of cultural erasure, which is not, like, she's saying that she doesn't want to do that. And with the values that, like, the rest of Discovery is trying to say, that doesn't line up with what the show is saying that they value either. So it doesn't make sense, because it makes you really uncomfortable, because it's like, well, when I actually think about the cultural analogy, it's more like they're saying, okay, you're, like, yes, you are a Native American, but you need to dress like an American, so you have to take out your braids. You're not allowed your braids.
Well, but Rachel, the logic here is Cole's family is bad. So that means his culture is bad. That house's culture is bad because they are bad. And that's how they think that, and that's what it's supposed to be. We're not supposed to think of it like how you're just saying about it, right?
We're not meant to think about it. That's part of Star Trek Discovery.
It is basic, but it is. Here's how they want you to think about it in a way. It is your house holds on to these old barbaric traditions that we must shed and move past. So stop having them. To be hyperbolic, I like to be hyperbolic, it is basically to go to the maximum evil of our societal structures that we are aware of. It is...
If your family was Nazis, you don't get to wear swastikas.
But you can relate it too to what you're saying of, well, you came from an Apache family, and they did a lot of bad stuff to our white families, so take out those braids.
Yeah.
Like, they don't know what to do with the Klingons.
No, they don't.
And they don't understand, they don't communicate effectively to us, the audience, the internal structure of it, except for Laurel Good.
No, they haven't got
but
time.
Laurel speaks like a dictator and a fascist at the end, but that's because...
We need to get back to the red signals. We need to get back to Spock. We need to get back to Burnham. We need to get to Tilly having a parasite.
Laurel is a conflicting thing for us because of what we said in the previous season, but in even this episode, when she has her little speech at the end, I can't help but see how the camera frames her, where she's standing. She's standing in front of a podium. She's using these hand gestures. She's speaking in this rhythm.
The
I can't help but
iconography.
note that the iconography of the scene is very reminiscent of dictators or cult leaders or evil people. I can't help but relate it to that. So when it ends with her being like, "You call me mother," and they all cheer and roar, it feels like this is the next step in the villain's story. But
Yeah,
Laurel's a good person
Laurel's a
in the
good
universe of
person.
Star Trek, and it makes
they're
it hard.
They're still making out like the Klingons are bad. The Klingons are still evil, but Laurel is not evil like the rest of the Klingons.
Well, she's going to change them.
So it becomes like a weird, like, I'm not like other girls or hashtag not all men situation.
Hashtag not all Klingons.
You are my children, as I raise this family to greatness. Do not refer to me as Chancellor, for I deserve a fiercer title. From this point forth, you may call me Mother.
Also, it's so telegraphed. The scene takes so long, and you just know from the
You know
beginning.
where it's going.
You know exactly what she's going to say, but it still takes so long to get there. So it also becomes eye-rolling in that way, because
And the
even
same
if
thing-
even if it did work as a female empowering moment, it is telegraphed so early in that scene, and they just wander slowly over there to say it and treat it like, ta-da! We know where you're going to go with that from the very beginning of the scene.
And
Just
it's not
fucking
the
get there already.
It's not the only scene in this episode that has that kind of pacing issue, because
Oh.
I got to the point where I was so fed up watching the scene where Tilly's in the command chair and they're meant to be doing like the shadow program. I literally stuck my fingers in my
Shit,
ears and was
God.
humming because I was so tired of the cringe humor that they were using in that scene, because it just went on and on and on.
I got a question. No, I'm not joking. Do you think that scene with Tilly was supposed to be funny? Do you think it was supposed to be funny, or do you think it was supposed to be genuinely awkward and traumatic for her? Because it's treated like a dramatic scene
It
from the rest of
is.
the episode's standpoint, but there was the funny music and the funny reactions.
Yeah.
But was it supposed to be a funny scene, or was it supposed to be a dramatic scene? Because it's treated dramatically for her character and the rest of the episode standpoint, but in the moment, it's treated like it's supposed to be awkward, Tilly, haha, funny. But which is it? And it's not necessarily that I'm not noticing. It's
I
not.
don't know.
It's not as if it starts funny and then turns tragic. They
No.
treat it like
It's funny from the start, like within the scene.
it's like the typical Tilly,
It
haha,
is-
awkward. She's gone
like,
awkward.
haha, like she's being weird, but there's this serious thing going on. But yeah, like the music kind of indicates that it's cheerful and
And
funny.
Her
As does like
acting and
Pike
Pike
is
and-
trying to be nice about the situation, but then
Then
it's treated as
Saru.
being like devastating, and she's like, because of that, she's ended her career, which makes no sense other than her being over dramatic. But Michael just ignores that.
I don't know if that scene was supposed to be funny. If it was, it failed. It went on.
And
the
if it
timing...
was meant to be dramatic, it also failed. Because
I'll disagree in one way. If the scene was
What?
supposed to be dramatically awkward, it was effective for me because it made me feel awkward and it made me feel uncomfortable. And if that was the intention of the scene as a whole, it worked, because from beginning, middle, and end, I felt uncomfortable and awkward
And
on
I did
behalf
too.
of our character of
Yeah.
Tilly. That being said, it went on too long, and it did
Oh, so
have a
long.
character involved that I fucking hate. May, I'm talking about you, girl. You're almost as bad as Neelix.
These people are lying.
Is this the most boring episode of Star Trek Discovery we've seen so far? Or is it not? Because to me, it is. I find the
Yeah.
Blue Planet episode to be far more engaging. This, although we're
There's-
getting heated about it, I still find it boring. These things that
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
getting heated about, I genuinely don't care about them that much. I'm getting heated about them because we're talking to one
Yeah.
another and we're having to do a podcast. But really,
I will
the
remem-
mother thing, whatever.
I will
Tilly,
remember being
whatever.
annoyed, but not what made me annoyed.
It is like I watched Static for 45 minutes. There's important things that happen that progress the story forward. There's character moments. There's jokes. There's action.
Stuff happens, but I
Stuff
don't
happens.
care.
Why does the stuff not stick in this episode so profoundly for us? And evidently for other people, because I read some of the reviews on IMDb, and a lot of people point out the similar issues of it is just profoundly dull. Why is that? Because I'm having a hard time figuring out what about this episode in particular makes it just bounce off like how it does. Because it does all the typical Star Trek Discovery things, but somehow this one just, it evaporates so quickly, and I'm just looking around like, did that episode happen or was that a dream?
I think for me, a part of it at least is the fact that every scene is meant to be like tense, suspenseful, and emotionally wrought. Like every single scene is meant to be impactful and emotional and is meant to make you care. But they spend no time setting that up. So I end up not giving a shit about any of it and just getting frustrated that it keeps on like throwing things at me. And it's just like, well, why? Why do I care? You're not making me care. You're telling me that I should, but you're not doing any of the work to make any of this worthwhile for me.
I think what makes this episode bounce off for me is they're outside of the Klingon storyline. Out of the three, we have three primary stories: Tilly's story, Michael's story, and the Klingon story. Outside of the Klingon story, really, the other two in particular don't really have a compelling plot within them at all. They are just things happen. And I relate them into this manner, which is, you know, in these serialized stories, we get the scene in an episode where we find out an important piece of information and it furthers the series-long plot, but it's still within an episode that has a plot, right? This episode is that scene for 45 minutes. Yes, it's important to the thing, but it's not furthering anything within the actual episode we're watching. It's going to further the revelations and the information and the narrative of the series and of the story, but of the actual episode it's in, it is additional information, but it is not narrative of the actual episode. And that's how I feel about this one. Is it feels like that scene, just here it is for the episode. Like, yeah, things happen, but none of it is particularly memorable. Like, even episodes we didn't like C-Viz, Pac and Parabellum, I could tell you the plot of it. I didn't find it particularly compelling, but it was an away mission. Saru got affected, and he turned on them. See how easy that was? This episode...
There's a process of... I'm sure that I've referred to this like system of summarizing before, but somebody wanted something, so something happened, then something happened, and there was a result. But this, it doesn't have it. Like, each element has it, like something happened and then something happened.
Yeah.
But there wasn't ever really a want or a drive other than just to resolve the situation, which just gets really boring.
This one is, I just said to you the Seavers Pack and Parabellum one, the plot.
Yeah.
With what I told you, you could fill into your brain what happens in that episode without having seen it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could.
It makes sense.
Not only that, even if you're wrong, you get an idea of what the narrative could be. This episode, the way to describe it is just Michael finds out this. Tilly finds out this. That's the episode, really. Outside of this Klingon plot, which we will
Ash
talk about.
leaves Koinas.
Yeah, but the Klingon plot has more of a traditional narrative thing, but the rest of it is piece of information gained. Piece of information gained. Nothing else. Nothing else. Like, it's just that bad. Like, Michael's story is so perfunctory that it actually was awesome because Michael didn't do anything in the episode. It was great. I kind of respect it because it gave Michael nothing to do for a whole episode. I love it. I love it. Like, she's in the episode, but she gets nothing to do, and it was great. I loved it. It was like a Wesley episode where Wesley would be in it, but he got nothing to do. And those were like the best episodes of early TNG, were the one where Wesley, yeah, he's in it, but he didn't get anything to do in the episode. That's this one. Michael's here, but she gets nothing to do, and it was great. I loved it. It was awesome. She helped Tilly out with a moment with figuring out what May could be, and that was about it. But in her own storyline, she didn't do anything. She just revealed information we already heard before, which is, I fucked up Spock. We don't even get to find out what she did, so that was it. That's all she did in her storyline, was just tell us something we already heard about it in 2 episodes ago. But she didn't do anything in her own story, and it was great. Because Michael, from an analytical point of view for us, is the least interesting one to engage with, because she just is so bland of a character. So when we deconstruct about what doesn't work about her, it really does come down to we just don't find her very interesting. While with stuff of what does and doesn't work about Paul and Saru and Lorca and Pike and Tilly, they are far more fruitful, because even if they succeed or even if they fail majorly, there's far more to grab onto because we are engaged with those characters far more than we can ever be with Michael. So when Michael is less of a focus in an episode, the episode feels kind of refreshing in a way, yet this is still the most boring episode. And is it because Michael is not propelling the story forward? Because as much as we don't like Michael, she has energy that she delivers to the show. Not the actress necessarily, but the character does force the narrative to propel forward. In this one, she's not serving that role. So is it that? Is it because Michael is not propelling the story forward? It is in fact staying still, and that is why the episode bounces off. Is it because actually Michael is important to Star Trek Discovery because she's the reason that things happen? This one, she doesn't have anything to make anything happen, so it falls completely flat. Because the person who is in charge of making things happen is fucking Ash Tyler, who, God fucking damn, is he less, like, he makes Michael far more interesting, because if you're left alone with him, you go, oh, I kind of miss Michael, because Ash Tyler has nothing going on for him. Oh, he's got a beard now, he's got long hair, and people find that makes his character better because look at him. I get that.
But Ryan, we do give Riker credit for getting a character when he gets a beard. So why doesn't it work for Ash?
Because he doesn't get a character when he got a beard. He's still nothing.
He is a liability. Can you kill him?
He doesn't do anything. He has to get saved by Georgiou. He doesn't save the situation of the plot. He doesn't resolve the plot. Another character who was never in the episode until the very end resolved the plot. A Deus Ex Machina came up and resolved his plot. Ash Tyler, all he did was stand around going, I want respect. I want respect. Respect me now.
But Ryan,
Michael, I love you, but I can't tell you that because Laurel.
None of the characters in this episode have agency over themselves.
Laurel does. Laurel's the only... No,
Because she gets saved by Giorgio too.
I know that, but Laurel actually attempts something. Laurel
comes closest, but she doesn't actually... She isn't the one that resolves her situation.
She resolves it at the end with her speech. I know, but that's manufactured by Giorgio.
That wouldn't have happened
without Giorgio.
So it's not true agency. It's not her having control over her life. Somebody else has put her in that position. Somebody else is keeping her there.
I agree, but within the narrative of the episode, she was the one in that story that had agency over their fates.
I disagree.
She tried. Ash Tyler didn't try anything.
Oh, he didn't try at all.
No. She had agency, although it didn't succeed. She at least tried to do something. Ash Tyler sat around.
But what did she try and do?
She tried to solve the coal problem with the dad. She's like, okay, my son's been kidnapped. I'm gonna go there. We're gonna get rid of this guy. And we're going to fight, we're going to kill, we're going to do all this stuff. We're going to figure it out. She got fucked up, but she at least tried. Ash Tyler, he didn't propel anything. He just stood around.
Went there too.
No, because
Ash tried to be the torchbearer.
Because she is the one... Because he goes there because he's attached to her. He is, what are they called? The little fish that latch onto a shark?
Oh, I can't remember what
a cuttlefish, right? Is that what they are? He's whatever that. He's a leech on a bigger, more interesting character. And I don't like Laurel, but yeah, there's problems. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but she at least had agency in the narrative out of all the characters involved, out of her and Ash. She was the one that actually questioned him about where he stands. She was the one that actually... I don't know. She had something more than him. He just stood there and winced and moaned and bitched and had a little cock-block talk with Michael. That's all he did was phone Michael to let her know the plot.
I also just want to say a little bit of, I guess to be honest, a fuck you to that scene. Because it was dumb of him to begin with. To call her to say, hey, Laurel's in trouble. Because...
What's Michael going to do?
Why Michael?
Because he loves her.
He loves her.
That's why. Don't think about any other reason. He loves her.
Like, he's the... she's the only one that he
trusts.
He trusts. And that's still in Starfleet, because, you know... Like, he couldn't contact Saru, because that wouldn't make sense to contact a first officer.
Saru helped save his life by convincing Laurel to do the right thing. Why would he trust Saru? That would be stupid. Don't think about it.
No, that
because Michael and him are lovers. They love each other.
I trusted her to notify the Federation that an insurrection of the High Council might be brewing.
So she is the only one you trust. That is the only reason it was that particular human woman.
Yes. That is the reason.
To get serious for a second, this is the part of the episode where we're going to touch upon the sexual abuse aspect of the Ash Tyler story, because the episode brought it up for one line and never really touched it again, but I want to touch it. I want to talk about it. In the episode... They further the relationship drama between Ash, Tyler / Vok and Laurel. Also Michael involved as well. There's a love triangle thing going on there. But one of the things that's happening is, as much as Ash Tyler is trying to be the Klingon Vok, he can't be. And one of the reasons he can't do it is because of his PTSD when Laurel... is around, and he's around her all the time.
She is pressuring him
to fall in love with her.
Try and be that. She says, like, if you want to be Vok, want me back. And want me back in a romantic, in a sexual way.
Well,
that is how you prove that you are Vok, not Ash Tyler. And if you want to be Klingon, you have to want to fuck me because Vok wanted to fuck me.
Look, I don't want to be as aggressive as you are with that. I took that more as he's insisting that he's not Ash Tyler anymore. And she's saying, well, you would want me if you were Vok because we were madly in love. And she's not wrong. She's not wrong there. My point of contention comes from the fact that they do bring this up. There's a scene in which she's touching him and he talks about, like, well, when this happens, when we're together and you touch me, it feels like, because I'm Ash Tyler, from Tyler's point of view, it's a violation. And that's furthering the plot from season 1 of Ash Tyler is a victim of sexual abuse. And here it is being brought up again. But
she essentially says that you should get over it.
And the problem is the way that they've constructed it. Is she wrong? And I don't mean to be I don't mean to be disregarding and offensive to people who have suffered this.
That way.
But the way that this sci-fi narrative is played out, Ash Tyler's wrong. That did not happen. He is Vok, and that was consensual sex. And now that he knows
that way, but
and
his
now that
feelings are invalid.
And that's how the show has framed it. And when a moment like this happens, why am I still supposed to like Laurel when in this actual episode he says out loud the words violation? And I'm supposed to feel for Ash Tyler, yes? So why in the episode am I still supposed to like Laurel? It doesn't work. And we've talked about why it doesn't work before, but this episode brings it to the forefront, and all I could think of, this is one of the most toxic relationships I've seen in recent years on television. It's not as toxic as, say, Neelix and Kez's relationship from Voyager. I still find that one gross and problematic, but this is still a problem. And I was told, I brought this issue up a few times on social media, and we brought it up on the pod, and one of the things I got told was, well, in season 2 they address it and they separate, and so it's okay. Now I've seen the episode, they address it by just stating it, but they don't actually address the issue at hand. They still leave it in this weird limbo land in which is she wrong for telling him to get over it? Well, no, because it didn't nothing happened. But at the same time, that is such a dangerous thing to have in your show when, for the first season, you were lauded and celebrated yourself for having such a progressive, groundbreaking, and particularly sensitive topic matter brought into your show. And then it's revealed, well, it wasn't actually a rape. It was consensual sex, but he's misremembered it. Now he fully remembers it. Now he knows his Vok.
Yeah,
now
he has access to all of those memories now.
He still finds it a violation because he's still Ash Tyler. But factually, he's wrong. But emotionally, he feels this way. And it's just such a weird thing to put in the show that I just don't understand still to this day why they wanted this in there, other than to make us feel empathy or sympathy for Ash Tyler to begin with. Because what a great way to make you feel sorry for someone. They're a victim of rape. But now the show has gone on. We've gone past the introductory phase of making us care for the character. We're at the stage where we're supposed to already care about the character. So what do we do with this rape storyline we introduce? Well, we gotta talk about it. So this is how they handle it. And it is a mess, to say the least, because there's so many conflicting things going on here that don't add up. I'm still supposed to like Laurel? I don't. So it's failed in that regard. Am I supposed to feel sorry for Ash Tyler? I don't, because I know that he's wrong. Factually, he's wrong. I'm not denying the emotions he feels, but the show has demonstrated factually he is incorrect. Which we've talked about why that is weird that the show has done that, but it is still weird. And at the end of this, I'm supposed to be a little bit bummed that their relationship has been severed. I don't. And whenever they bring up the rape stuff, it makes me feel uncomfortable, and not in the way, not in the right way, not in the way that they may intend, but in the way that it makes me uncomfortable that they put this in their story, because it seems like they put it in without any purpose other than the momentary purpose of how the audience would react and nothing else.
You touch me. And that intimacy, to me, Tyler, feels like violation.
This episode is a Klingon story episode. This one is propelled by what's happening on Kronos, and why that makes this episode particularly boring is because the Klingons are no longer serving a narrative purpose to the show. This story exists so we can further what Ash Tyler is going to be in the show, because Ash Tyler is an important character, but at the end of season 1, he left. So we have to explain what he's up to, and we have to make it so that he's no longer in this situation so he can come back to the show. The Klingons, however, are still involved in his world, so they have to have an episode dedicated to them. But the issue is, they have nothing to offer anymore. They are no longer the outright antagonists. They are no longer. They were never going to aim to have them start another conflict again, because we know at the end of this season, Discovery takes itself out of the show and goes to the future. So this episode is really dull upon a rewatch, even more so, because none of it matters. All it matters is so that we can explain what Ash Tyler has been up to and take him out of the situation so he can come back into the show, which also means the end of season 1, his story feels even duller and even more of a waste of time with his teary-eyed goodbye, because we know all of it leads to nothing.
Yeah.
His little adventure on Kronos meant nothing.
4 episodes and he's pretty much back to where he was.
And this is so the Klingon plot has things in it. You could say this is the episode where they try to attempt a coup on Kronos to take out Chancellor L'Rell. You could say that, but that would imply that that's the focus of that story, not Ash Tyler, who is the focus of that story. And since he actively does not participate strongly enough in that narrative does not come to the forefront of that plot line. So it fails because of that. So that's why this is so boring. On top of the other 2 storylines, which are so boring that we've already stated as to why they are boring, this is why another reason why this episode is so profoundly forgettable and the lowest rated, in my opinion.
Oh, but Tilly gets an exorcism.
How do we get rid of it?
We use the attraction between the fungal spores and the dark matter asteroid to suck her out of you. This might hurt a bit.
Hugh. Hugh is not mentioned, referenced, or has any relevance to this episode. You could, honestly, if you just saw this episode, you wouldn't even know he existed as a character. But
I forgot we had to do the Hugh.
But to talk about the Hugh, there is some things I will bring up that you may think are tangential, but I have to because this is a section of the show about Hugh, the amazing character of Hugh. Clearly May, the parasite creature, she wants them to come into the network to get Hugh out of there. We know that in retrospect. Mm-hmm. Too bad that May is an annoying creature of a character that we despise and find aggravating. So even on a rewatch, that aspect of her story that we now know does not matter because we do not like her. That performance is so annoying, and her character, and all of it's annoying. But the one thing I wanted to talk about in the Hugh section that I really noticed, and it really is something that we've touched upon before, but it is really cemented here, which is, could you tell me why in the narrative of Star Trek Discovery, the sick bay is never an option to explore any problem ever? Because in this story...
You don't need sick bay, you need Stamets.
And in this story,
Burnham
she
says
never
it.
tries to go to the sick bay. She
No.
on purposely avoids it. For what reason?
Which
So
is
my question
really
is,
weird.
why is the sick bay never an option in Star Trek Discovery so far? Why?
See, I didn't think about it in that way. I just found it really frustrating that, like, Star Trek is meant to be utopian. So you think that they would have more of an open acceptance and acknowledgement of mental health. But Tilly is afraid to go to sickbay and talk about her hallucinations.
Well, she says, like, I've avoided going to it, and then she says,
Yeah.
I've run out of options now. No, you haven't, bitch. You just admitted the biggest option you've just avoided. For what reason? So the story could happen.
Yeah.
But my
That
thing is,
that's it.
but why throughout the whole series do they always reject the med bay
they
and
only
what it
ever-
offers as a solution?
It's only if they're dying. It's only if they're dying or if they're passed out that they ever go to sick bay, from my memory.
But why? Okay, so I can understand this. We want Paul to solve problems, or the mycelial network, or the spore drive issue. Like at the end of the last season, Tilly solved a situation because engineering worked and not medicine, right? That we had a whole thing about that with her and Saru, and it was like they never even tried to figure out medicine-wise how to solve Paul's issue last season. They just immediately went to, let's do engineering. I can understand, okay, the solution is
doesn't make
this
sense, really.
specific piece of technology and this specific engineering style. I can get that, but what I don't understand is, why do they never show us the scenes that you would see in any other show of medicine isn't working, or the medical side cannot explain the phenomena here? They never show that. They always just treat it like medbay was never an option, and they just refuse to use it. I would understand if in this episode, Tilly went to the medbay and they couldn't figure out what was going on, and they were dismissive and going, "Oh, you're stressed."
Because
But they don't do
Stamets
that.
Stamets looks specifically for the spores, but medbay wouldn't necessarily look for an interdimensional fungus.
But the weird thing is, he shows us the parasite
scan.
on a med scan thing, so I don't know. But why do they refuse to do that? Why is that the case? Because that's one of the reasons Hugh never had a character in the first season, was because they refused to let him do things that a doctor would serve in a story, like how we've discussed. So this episode really made me think about that. Why? And I don't know the answer to that. I understand the rationale of the end goal, the end of it, which is we want Paul to use his specialty and his expertise and the spore world to figure out the solution. I understand that. But why is it never an option of using the med bay or using them there? Even if you show them that they can't figure it out and that they can't explain it, and then you turn to engineering for the solution, it confounds me. It is profoundly, like, I don't understand why they never show the med bay being an option here. And in this episode, when she said, I'm all out of ideas of what I could do, and yet she admits that she's never even attempted to go to med bay, I can't feel sympathy for her, because she's clearly got a problem that medical science could possibly explain, and yet she rejects it. I don't know why. They just refuse it. And it's one of the reasons Hugh was rejected so strongly by us in the first season, because there's so many opportunities in Star Trek Discovery to give the medical characters something. Even if they don't solve the solution, you can give them something. But they don't want to.
I am losing it, Michael. She's wearing me down. I've been avoiding sickbay, but at this point I don't know what to do. I'm desperate.
I'm keen to know, what are we up for next week? Because I've actually kind of forgotten where we were in the story. Like, that's how much of a detour this episode was. Where, like, remember when this was a show about tracking the Red Angel signals?
Well, we only have like 7 signals, and there's more than 7 episodes. So
Oh, so we're going to get each and every signal. And we're going to explain all of them. Okay, I'm sorry. Go
they're
on.
pacing themselves. So next week we will be covering the 4th episode of season 2, An Oval for Sharon.
Mm-hmm.
And the synopsis is: a mysterious sphere threatens the USS Discovery, even as May, in her original form, implements a plan that puts Tilly's life in danger. Saru and Burnham's bond grows when Saru is forced to acknowledge a deeply unsettling Kelpian truth.
Mm-hmm.
Pike receives...
Oh my god, it's still going. Sorry, go on.
Pike receives new intel on Spock from a loyal friend, which is Una.
Oh, does it say that?
No.
You remember that number 1's real name is Una, and that's really silly?
Yeah.
What would you give this episode, Rachel? Would you give it a yum, meaning bad, or a yum yum, meaning good?
Yum.
I also give this episode a yum. It is probably the most yum episode of Star Trek Discovery. That's it, Rachel. Where can the people follow us on the internet?
Check us out on pretty much all of the various social medias at YumYumPod. If you just want to take a look at that neat little description, it should have all of the links to our Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and our Patreon if you would like to support us.
What are we doing on Patreon?
Get some extra content where we talk about some things that aren't Star Trek, usually various TV shows that we've watched over the years, and then the Star Trek movies, as well as the best and worst rated episodes of the TV series from the original series up to Enterprise.
Yep, and you can email us at yumyumpod@gmail.com to let us know your thoughts and opinions on things that we've discussed or haven't discussed on the pod, or just ask us questions, or if you just feel like hitting us up for a conversation. And again, all of this is in the description of this episode. Feel free to rate and review us on whatever podcatcher allows it. It is always greatly appreciated to get a rating and review, preferably a 5-star one, or yum yum, depending what one you're doing it on. I'm pretty sure Apple has moved on beyond stars and have finally adopted the yum yum rating system. So, Rachel, I think it's time for... Wait. Oh my god, we've got a red signal, Rachel. It's right over there. Let's put on our angel wings and just fly off.